The United States and Canada will clash for the CONCACAF Nations League final in what is likely maybe the new big rivalry in CONCACAF. And today, we're going to be doing a full match preview for the final. Hi, Senor Juan Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to the ultimate Canada versus United States CONCACAF Nations League final. And there's plenty of great storylines in this final match right here. Will the rude Canadians finally get their trophy and establish themselves as one of the top nations in CONCACAF? Will the US men's national team win and continue their dominance in the region as the Kings of CONCACAF after taking down Mexico? Well, we're going to talk about that today with Josh from JJD TV and One Soccer and Manuel Veth from Transfermark. Two very rude Canadians, but also two dear friends of the channel. We'll be debating and we'll give our score predictions at the end along with projected starting 11. All right. The two best teams in CONCACAF meet in the final of the CONCACAF Nations League this Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're not on the East Coast, you can figure out your time zone on your own. For that reason, so no one can call me biased, I decided to bring two, not one, two rude Canadians to the channel. And let's start with the first one here. Manuel, welcome back.
It's been a while. It's been too long. We've been all busy. Yeah. But how's it going, Filippo? It's good to be back. On the same day, Greg Berhalter, your best friend, is being reappointed as the U.S. men's national team.
You must be happy, aren't you? You both are happy, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
I have a smile.
I don't mind it.
What about you, Josh?
I'm doing good. My hat game's not very good though. Look at Manuel's hat. That is a nice look right there.
I got no grabbing the West Coast.
Yeah,
it's
looks
by
good.
the way, kickoff time is 5:30 Pacific.
There you go. He's got the time zones. But let's talk about this final here, because Canada had a relatively easy matchup with Panama, and they showed that it was easy with an unquestionable win. And the United States also had an unquestionable win against Mexico. And it's getting to a point where it's quite clear what the two best teams in the region are. And that's what I wanted to dive into first. How much this game means to Canada, because from the United States point of view, the way I see it, it's for the U.S. to make the final statement. It's like we win this, and then we can finally say, all right, we're the number ones in CONCACAF. Now Canada and Mexico, it's your turn to chase us. Because despite us saying it, it's still, there's one thing missing for us. We beat Mexico multiple times. We won the trophies, but we need to beat Canada. We haven't, right? We didn't beat Canada. I mean, we beat in the Gold Cup in 2021, but that was a bit different. In the World Cup qualifying, we didn't beat Canada. So this for the United States is to finally make a statement in regards to we are the number ones in CONCACAF. Not that that matters much on a global scale, but in the region it does. But when you look at the Canadian perspective, it's also to make a statement. And then I'll give Josh maybe the mic first for this one, and then I want you to tell us too, Manuel, from a Canadian perspective, what is this game about? What are you guys envisioning, and how important is it, Josh?
I think it's pride. I think Canada's come a long way, as we've seen. The amount of players that we have who are now playing abroad that are taking this next step, that we've done well in the last Gold Cup. We did really well through qualifying. We've gone to a World Cup. We didn't do overly well at that World Cup, but we went to a World Cup. We're building something pretty special here. But at the end of the day, we've heard pundits say it. I've heard Alistair Johnston say it, and I'm going to quote him again, where he's just like, I know that we won World Cup qualifying, but I don't remember lifting a trophy. And after going to Celtic and lifting 3, I'm telling you, we didn't win anything. So it's time to prove that we are not only here competing with Mexico, competing with the US, but we can actually overtake them. And I know, Taki told me that you think our better chance of winning a trophy this summer is a Gold Cup. Now, whether I agree with you or not, I think that tournament's going to be very different than the Nations League. The Nations League, Canada, US, Mexico sent their best squads. I think it's very fair to say whoever wins this tournament can look in the mirror and say, we're the Kings at the moment right now. We're the best in the region.
I agree.
If Canada does it, like, you can build on the qualifying process over all those games, which was impressive. And now you have some silverware to back it up. The US, who've won the last Nations League, Gold Cup, had the best representation of CONCACAF at the World Cup, can now be like, hey, back-to-back best team. So for me, it's about pride and to see this program show where it's at now and hopefully be able to win the first piece of silverware since the 2000 Gold Cup. So I'm pretty anxious. I'm pretty nervous, but I think the boys are up for the fight.
Manuel?
I mean, I'm not sure how much weight there is in the Nations League. Obviously, Josh, as you point out, the best teams are there, right? In terms of squad depth, because we don't know is Davies going to be at the Gold Cup? Is Jonathan David going to be at the Gold Cup? Right? The US traditionally doesn't really send the best team to that tournament either. So it kind of makes this trophy a bit more valuable. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of any Nations League, whether it's in CONCACAF or UEFA, I think it's a trophy that doesn't have the history yet. Maybe it will be. Maybe it'll get there, and maybe this tournament will do it, right? But winning would be very nice. I just think it's going to be extremely difficult to beat this US side in the final, based on the form and some of the weaknesses that we're going to look at in the squad, right? And I mean, the US did their best effort to decimate themselves in the semifinal.
We try.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just I'm not 100% warmed up yet to this Nations League, and maybe giving it meaning by having two different teams winning it, and the narrative has to kind of still write itself because this is only the second iteration of it. I think what is really interesting though, and it's kind of emerging, is that the US and Canada are kind of pulling away in CONCACAF from the other countries. And that includes Mexico, right? That who seem to really be struggling with on and off field issues. I mean, this game had to be abandoned early because of things that happened on the stands. And Canada, I don't know, doesn't have the pull yet financially and population wise. I don't know how many Canadians are down in Mexico and in Vegas to watch to watch this game. I think there's a lot of Canadians down there to watch the Stanley Cup parade. The actual game, right? So yeah, I'm kind of still torn. Obviously I think it's a huge match. It is a good place to kind of show where both programs are at, but I'm not sure about the weight of it yet until maybe the dust settles on the final.
I think a couple of things to add is, one, I agree with Josh in regards to the Gold Cup, because at the end of the day, Canada won't have their best in the Gold Cup. Yeah. The US won't have their best. Mexico, nobody really will have. Maybe Jamaica will bring their best. Who knows? The fact of the matter is, whoever wins the World Cup, there's always going to be that little star right there in that trophy just saying, well, you beat the B team, and okay, when it was the A team, that was the one that won. Those are the rosters that we would probably be sending to a World Cup, right? Canada, the US, the teams that are going to play this weekend. So I think that's one fact. The other one for Canada is, and the United States, these are two countries that are trying to grow the sport more and more, right? And just like Americans, Canadians like teams that win. That's what they want to go for. And I think what happened with Canada was there was a lot of hype coming into the World Cup, and some of the Canadians probably, well, all Canadians, but some of them got probably more disappointed than they expected with what happened in the World Cup. For some, there was a wake-up call when they faced elite competition, some UEFA nations, a very strong African side. And it was like, okay, outside of CONCACAF, it's like this. You get punished for the tiny little mistake, and you're done, right? Miss a penalty kick, boom, you're punished. You lose the game. So I think this trophy is very important for both nations. One, for the United States to build upon it, continue to show, hey, we're very strong here in the region, but we have to figure it out outside. And for Canadians, it's what Josh was saying. It can build some hype, get fan interest. People might start looking into the domestic league a bit more. It's like, okay, I'm kind of liking this, what's happening here, which probably a lot of them grew into it during World Cup qualifying. Try to see what's going on. I also think it's important for both teams to continue, well, the US to continue to build a winning culture, believing they can win trophies, and for Canada to start building that culture. Like you said, haven't won a trophy in like over 20 years. It has to start somewhere. And again, this can build a foundation for what Canada has next year, a big tournament. So does the US, the Copa America. That's the biggest tournament they can play outside of a World Cup right now.
Yeah.
You can build something out of this. That's what I think that can happen, because I had on the channel a while back Alan Smith that played for Manchester United, and he even talked about this, how when he shifted from Leeds to Man United, he's like, some of the players at Leeds were better, but just the culture that was within that Sir Alex Ferguson United, it was just meant to win trophies. Mm-hmm. And then you get players like John O'Shea and Wes Brown playing a role on winning a Champions League. You see that there's the culture and everything that you have to build. But I want to go through, let's start with Emmanuel here. You talked about concerns and roster weakness for Canada. Facing this U.S. side, what's your biggest concern from the Canadian end?
Defense. And I mean, this has been a discussion point that we've had even going into the World Cup, right? This is where Canada has a lot of problems and, lacks a little bit of depth as well. I mean, we got Cameron Miller, who plays for Inter Miami, and probably is going to Europe in the summer, right? That trade to Inter Miami was in anticipation of him potentially leaving for Europe. But then it's a little thin. I mean, Scott Kennedy got relegated with Regensburg to the 3rd division in Germany. It's probably going to leave and stay in the 2nd division, go to Bundesliga, or maybe even come back to MLS. But that's not the very top. Steven Victoria, very reliable, also but 36. Moises Bambito got called up from the Colorado Rapids. He's 23. He's playing his first MLS season ever, right? It's just that depth really concerns me. And there's a couple of moments, and I mean, he's having this more and more frequently as he's getting older, is Milan Borjan and his reliability. I think that if Kripo hadn't had suffered that really terrible injury in the MLS Cup final, I think we probably would have already transitioned over to him as the number 1 goalkeeper, because he's still, I just think that Borjan always has a mistake in him. And thankfully, when the midfield does well, and I mean, Josh, you pointed this out before the podcast, it didn't always against Panama, but if the midfield does well, it covers up a lot of those mistakes in the back line. But the United States have a lot of depth in attack and added in Balogun a very good piece, right? So that is something that I find quite concerning. I think that is something that Canada in general still has to work on. We have possibly the 2 best players in CONCACAF. And then there's a lot of good players throughout the squad, like Buchanan, Alistair Johnston, we're all international class. But then there's also a lot of, I don't want to say deadwood, but players who are maybe not quite up to the standard yet. And that is, I think, the biggest difference between the US and Canada.
Josh, Emmanuel, it goes back to that joke that I made a while back. We talked about how Canada's roster is like an MLS roster. You have 3 DPs, the composition, 3 DPs, which is Davies, Eustachio, and David. And then you have some players on a max gam tam like Laren, Buchanan, and a couple quality players, Alistair Johnson. And then outside of that, the drop-off sometimes is very big from one to another.
I would say it's gotten better. I think that Buchanan and Johnston, but Buchanan is going to Inter Milan for 15 million euros, and he's going to play a really big role there. So he's going to a top Italian team, right? From my understanding is that deal is pretty much done. So, we're getting more players at top clubs is what I'm trying to say. And Johnston, he's not going to be at Celtic forever the way he's been playing, right? But so it's getting better. We're getting more players in key positions playing at the very highest level. But it just doesn't feel like it's quite there yet. That the progression is there, but there's also a lot of positions still that concern me.
Well, the trajectory of Canadian soccer is most certainly better than Mexico. Canada is going this way, right? Mexico is going that way.
Although I do have some concerns about dual citizens and the fact that Canada Soccer hasn't had the money to fund some of the camps that were necessary. There's a young player named Costa who plays for Wolfsburg, who's now trending towards Portugal, so we might lose him. This is something that Canada Soccer needs to address. If they want to make this progress, we want to continue this, I'm getting a little bit off kilter here, but if we want to continue this progress, there needs to be money going into the system to ensure that young players are staying with the program rather than going somewhere else, right? Because Canada is, just like the United States, a nation of many countries, which means like almost every single person I know has dual citizenship, right? So like that means that you are always in danger of losing these players, and that is maybe something, in a future outlook beyond this tournament. But, it is something that keeps me up at night.
And Josh, what is your biggest concern coming in to face the United States?
Well, Manuel just took a big picture look at that, and I agree with what he's saying. I mean, the youth camps have been an issue for a very long time, but looking at this game, just this is a one-off game. We're one match away from winning something, and in the last two matches against the US, I know that was in World Cup qualifying and it was a little while ago, but we got the better of them twice. I think despite the level of where you can argue where these players are at right now, we have a key factor, and that's John Herman. John Herman can get this team to all buy in, to do a system, to play a way that they can win. I mean, you saw it at Tim Hortons Field. They had no problem sitting back, soaking up so much pressure. The US couldn't create a whole lot of chances, and we countered with the players that we know that can shine, like your fast players that can do something special. And I think for this one-off game right now, I'm not as worried about the back three, just because I thought they played decent against Panama, and the fact that they're playing at their club level. And I think in a one-off game, not like looking at the future, that they can do a job. My worry would be is getting the starting 11 right. And we've seen it time and time again, because of the way that our midfield was very light on depth. We like playing with a two-man midfield, whether that was a 4-4-2 for a while, this 3-4-3. And I think when you take on teams that are higher quality, like we saw at the World Cup, we didn't have the depth to even put in that three-man midfield. We had injuries and fitness issues. We just got ran over. You can pull it off against your Honduras, your Panama, sometimes your Costa Rica, but
your
against
Mexico,
maybe your Mexico, maybe when we beat them.
Maybe even, you can throw the US in there as well.
Yeah, throw the US. That's
depending. Is it because I want to show one thing. If you want to talk about bad midfields, this was the starting 11 that I'm going to put on screen that the US put out to face Canada in Nashville. I don't know if you can see it on screen right now. Does it show it to you?
I cannot.
You cannot? Hold on.
It's loading.
What's going on here? I'm going to have to probably cut.
Having said that, I have this homepage open that has all past fixtures in there as well.
Hold on. Let me try to.
It's called Transfermarkt. And that was the one against when you look at past fixtures.
You're talking about the 1-1, Filippo? Like the one in Nashville? I think Filippo froze.
That was in 2020. That was 2021, right? The 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I think Filippo froze though. Filippo. Yeah, he froze.
He froze, putting up the lineup. There's a joke in there.
And he's gone. He's gone. His own show, and he
the US. He put the Greg Bell the lineup up, and the internet crashed.
Yeah, I'm back.
You missed a great joke, Filippo. You missed a great joke. I hope that joke got recorded for all eternity.
I think it did. I think.
Why is this not working? It's not sharing the screen. I'm just gonna.
It's fine though. I have the lineup right in front of me. If you want me to rattle it down.
Yeah, I can read it here real quick. So the lineup, restarting here because we had recording issues. So the lineup that the United States put against Canada the last time we faced you was Matt Turner on goal, Dest on the right, and then Yedlin came in and he got torched by Alfonso Davies. A-Rob on the left, Miles Robinson and John Brooks. Kellen Acosta, Tyler Adams, and Sebastian Lletget was our midfield. That's bad right there. That's worse than Canada. Like Tyler Adams had to carry that midfield. Up top, you had Brendan Aronson that even scored, Pefok, and Christian Pulisic. So regardless of the players the United States won't have against Canada, we won't have Weston McKennie and Serginho Dest. The lineup that's going to face Canada will be much stronger. That's for sure.
I agree, and that's the kind of the point I was going at. Is I'm more worried about the midfield battle, and I think if you play a two-man midfield in a 3-4-3, 4-4-2, it will get outnumbered and it will get outmanned. I think that you need to adjust and find someone to put in there, whether that's Azorio if he's full fitness, whether that's Junior Hoylett to come in and do a job. I think you need to do a 3-5-2. I think that's the way that this Canadian side was built. You have your back three, you have your two wing backs where you can hit with pace, whether that's Buchanan, Davies. You have some comfortability in the midfield, having a three-man midfield, and then you have Larin and David up front. And like I also said, and I've mentioned this a few times, Larin was very, very quiet when he was pushed out wide in the game against Panama. I don't think he necessarily likes playing that way. And I just feel like that's the way this Canadian side is built. And if you want to get outnumbered and outmanned, I think we could run into some big troubles if we just play Eustachio and Kone. I think you need, like I said.
So, Josh, good point right there. What would be your starting? Look, the United States, I can give you the starting 11 right now. I'm pretty sure it's going to be like this. It's going to be Turner on goal, a 4-2-3-1, Turner on goal. It'll be Joe Scally on the right, A-Rob on the left, Richards and Miles Robinson. The midfield will be double pivot, Luca De La Torre with Yunus Musa, Gio Reyna as the 10, Way on the right wing, Pulisic on left wing, and Balogun up top. Considering that'll probably be the lineup you'll face, how would you set up Canada to face this United States, and why?
Well, ideally, as long as everyone's got like fully fitness and ready to go, because like I mentioned, it seems like they treated Davies over the 180 minutes instead of just like looking at a game at a time. Which I think it's a good thing, because we got the win against Panama. We gave him obviously 60 plus minutes of rest, and now hopefully we'll be able to unleash him for the full 90. So assuming everyone's fit, and same could be said about Osorio. It'll be, I'm hoping for a 3-5-2, Oriens and net, right wing back, probably Buchanan. That means Richie would go to the bench, but you could do either or. Johnston, Vittoria, Miller, your 3 center backs, Davies at left wing back. Then I would do Eustachio, Kone, and Osorio. If Osorio is not fit, then Hoylett. And then I would do David and Laird up top. And like I said, just because I think this team can play pretty comfortably with the back 3, utilize the wings. I mean, Herdman has a quote of saying, unless Iniesta and Xavi drop out of the sky, we're playing to our strengths. We're playing through the wings. So I just think having that extra body in the midfield, that creative player like an Osorio or Hoylett, ideally Osorio. Those 3 played together in the previous window, and they look very comfortable together. They complement each other very well. And then it leads the 2 up front, Laird and David. And sometimes they can be hit or miss of how well they're going to gel together. But I mean, they're both in excellent form, and I don't think there's another option you can put up front. So for me, ideally, that's the 11 I'd like to see.
Manuel, would you change anything from that?
I'm not the biggest Osorio fan.
So, like, if you did a 3-man midfield, though, who would you toss in? Would you put Hoylett, or would you go Wotherspoon?
What was his 3-man midfield again?
Eustachio, who'd basically be like the 6, Kone the 8, and then Osorio the 10, or Hoylett the 10.
Yeah, you always got to play Kone because he is our biggest talent.
Other than that, I don't know if I would trust Wotherspoon to go into that role. I don't think I would trust. I don't think Herdman would trust Laturi yet. I mean,
I wonder if they're going to play Hutchinson because of the experience.
Isn't the guy like 40 years old?
Yeah, but you know what? Actually, man, you know what they could do, and they have done. They could put Davies in the middle, which I don't personally like, and then they could put Adekubi at left wing back, or even Larea at left wing back, and then you have Davies, Kone, Eustachio, and it's a pet peeve of mine because I think with Davies' strength, you only utilize him on the wing. But we've seen him play Cam before, like at least half a dozen times.
you gotta have to play Osorio. Right? Brings us back to my issues with players being in there that are just not necessarily up to that level.
Lack of depth.
Yeah. I'm also not a fan of having, like, on paper this was like a 4-4-2, right? I guess you can argue it's a back 3 against Panama, but Buchanan, I wonder what you're gonna do with him.
I mean, we have seen also you could push Larea or Buchanan in the midfield too, Emmanuel. Couldn't you?
Yeah.
If you wanted to play both.
Like when they played the US and beat them 2-0 in that second match, right? It was actually a 4-3-1-2. And it was a Kai in midfield and Buchanan and Larea. And Buchanan actually played in a midfield role in front of a top 4. And it was Laren and David as the 2 strikers, which I actually think is probably your best bet with playing with a 2 number 9s. Like Kyle Laren had such a good season with in Spain, right?
Half season,
yeah. But like he's increased his value so much there. He's probably getting a move to a top La Liga side this summer. And so you gotta utilize on that. Like you gotta play your 2 number 9s and rely on them in that kind of situation.
Well, you also end up forcing the United States to keep at least 1, maybe even 2 of the midfielders back a little bit because you have 2 guys forward, right? You don't want to leave both of them on a one-on-one situation, right? Miles and Chris Richards dealing with David and Laren the entire match.
Especially if McKennie is out.
McKennie's out too, which is a big body there in the midfield. But boys, before we close things here, match predictions here. You can either expand upon why you think it, or you can just say your score. Let's start with you, Manuel. What's your score prediction for this match here, the final on Sunday?
I'm actually kind of pessimistic. I think the US is going to win 2-1.
That sounds optimistic to me.
Oh God, here we go.
It's like it's pessimistic depending on what point of view. If you're American, we're all gonna applaud Manuel here. but I'll tell you one thing. My prediction, I gave it to Josh already before we did a video at One Soccer there. I said United States 2-0. And I told him one thing. My biggest concern is Canada scoring first. If Canada scores first, sits back, and starts to play in transition, I'm extremely worried. But I do think if the U.S. gets the first goal, I still don't think we're guaranteed, because we've seen that before. We got the first goal in Nashville, and Canada got the draw. If the U.S. gets the first goal, it's not over. But obviously, they become the clear favorites. If Canada scores first, I don't think we come back.
I think if Canada scores first, Canada will win the match.
Exactly. While the U.S., if they score first, I'm not so sure on it yet. But I do think the U.S. are the slight favorites in the final. I think, like you said, there's more depth. There's a bit more quality.
It's at home. It's at home.
Home. And the team is more stable. Also, the team is more accustomed to these games finals, because they play the last ones. For Canada, it could be nervy, right? It could be nervy. It's a big moment. I'm going to the United States 2-0. Josh?
I gave you my prediction already, and I'm relatively confident, but I could see it obviously going either way. Like it obviously depends on how the players perform. Like there's no reason to think that Canada can't win this, seeing what they've just done against the US, and there's no reason to think that the US can't, considering that how well they played against Mexico, and they are in a good place despite the outside noise. But I said 2-0 Canada just because I just feel like this is kind of their moment. Like it's like the last hurrah. There's a lot of players, like Manuel touched on. Like I think this is Borjan's last kind of look. Hutchinson, it's his last tournament. This is the last group, the core group that got them to the World Cup. This is their opportunity to go out on a high. I think Herman will get them up for it. I think that they want to win it. They do now have proven winners, which I do think is important. Johnson, who's finding success in Europe. Davies, of course, Eustachio. Like these guys are winning. So I just feel on a one-off match, some history to be made, and also just the outside noise of the U.S. You never know. Greg's back now. Who knows what he's
but
doing
the players like Greg. The players like Greg.
Yeah,
Allegedly.
And look at all the interviews. Like they were all happy.
Manuel, you got to remember one thing. If the Federation goes and tells you he'll be back, are you going to go on an interview and say he sucks? You're going to do the complete opposite. You're going to say he's great guy. Even Reina right now wouldn't criticize Greg. He'd probably give a very political, I'm happy he's back. It's good, blah, blah. Like you can't. If the Federation already told the players he's coming back, they're going to go and endorse, or at least say, Pepe looked a bit shocked. If you saw the interview, it was kind of funny actually when they told Pepe. He was like, "Oh crap, really?" And Weah also, he apparently endorsed him, but also Weah yesterday when they interviewed, he's like, "Oh, okay, kind of like just cool, okay, whatever." But Greg's not there. BJ Callahan was surprisingly fine against Mexico. He let the players play. He wasn't a problem. And it looks like the U.S. is playing better than they did when they were with Greg. And I think there's better players, of course, in the United States right now. The team looks better than they did before. There's no those MLSers that Greg loved very much. Good luck on Sunday to everyone. You guys are going to need it very much, the rude Canadians. And may the 4th be with all of us. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Drop a like before you go. Bye-bye.